Let's start somewhere honest. You do not need to come from money to build it. You do not need a trust fund, a wealthy relative, a lucky break, or a perfect moment in the economy. What you need is a clear head, a willingness to move slowly when everything in you wants to move fast, and the patience to let time do most of the heavy lifting. Most people never start because they believe the gap between where they are and where they want to be is too wide to cross. They look at people with wealth and assume there was some invisible advantage, some head start they were never given. And sometimes that's true. But more often than not, the people who built something real did it from a number that looked embarrassing, from a savings account that barely covered 1 month of expenses, from a salary that felt like it should never be enough. The gap isn't as wide as it looks. It just requires a different kind of thinking than most of us were ever taught. This is not a story about getting rich quickly. Nothing in this video will tell you about a shortcut or a trick or a secret that wealthy people don't want you to know. What this video is about is something quieter and more powerful than any of that. It is about building a system, one small, deliberate decision at a time, and letting that system compound into something that lasts beyond your own lifetime. That is what generational wealth actually means. It is not a number. It is a structure that keeps working after you stop. So take a breath, get comfortable, and let's walk through this together, step by step from the very beginning. Section 2. Understanding what money actually is. Before you can build wealth, you need to change the way you think about money. Because most people think about money incorrectly, and that one mistake costs them everything. Most people treat money as a destination, a number they are trying to reach. They think, if I can just get to 10,000 or 50,000 or 100,000, then I will feel safe. Then I will have made it. And so they spend their entire working lives chasing a number. And every time they get close, the number moves, and they feel like they are back at zero. Money is not a destination. Money is a system. And that is a very different thing. A destination is somewhere you arrive and stop. A system is something you build and maintain, and it keeps producing results whether you are actively working it or not. When you begin to see money as a system, your entire relationship with it changes. You stop asking, how do I get more money? And you start asking, how do I build something that generates money on its own? This is the shift that separates people who build lasting wealth from people who earn a lot and still feel broke. Systems have rules. They have inputs and outputs. They can be entered from almost any starting point, including a starting point that looks small or embarrassing, or not nearly enough. A system does not care where you begin. It only cares whether you are consistent. Here is the simplest version of the system. You earn money. You keep a portion of it before spending anything else. You put that portion to work in assets that produce more money over time. You protect what you build with the right legal and tax structures, and you let time do the compounding. That is the whole thing. Every section in this video is just a deeper look at one piece of that system. Section 3. The first move. Start before you're ready. The most common reason people never start building wealth is that they are waiting until they have enough money to make it feel real. They think $200 is too small to matter. They think they need to wait until they have 1,000 or 5,000 or a real amount before they begin. This is the single most expensive mistake you can make. Time is the only ingredient in this process that you cannot buy more of later. Every month you wait is a month of compounding you have permanently lost. The market does not give refunds on time you chose not to use. So you start now, with whatever you have. If you have $200, you open a brokerage account with $200. It will feel absurd. Do it anyway. You buy fractional shares of a broad market index fund. You do not try to pick individual stocks. You do not try to time the market. You buy a small piece of the entire economy and you let it sit. Then you automate it. This is the most important word in this section, automate. You set up an automatic transfer from your checking account to your investment account on the day after your paycheck arrives. Before you can decide whether to spend it, It has already gone into the account. You are not relying on your own willpower to invest. You are removing willpower from the equation entirely. This is how the floor gets built. Not the ceiling. The floor. You are not trying to get rich from $200. You are building the habit and the structure that will hold everything that comes after it. The amount does not matter nearly as much as the consistency. $20 a month invested at 22 years old will build more wealth than $300 a month invested starting at 35. The math is not even close. Time is the variable. Start early. Start small. Start now. Section 4. The second income and what competence buys you here is something almost nobody tells you about building wealth from a low starting point. Your single biggest lever in the early years is not the stock market. It is your ability to increase the amount of money flowing into the system. You can optimize a budget all you want, but there is a floor to how low your expenses can go. There is no ceiling, however, on how much you can earn. And in the early years, every extra dollar you can generate and redirect into your investment account accelerates everything else. This is where a second income comes in. Not a side hustle in the trendy social media sense. A real skill applied to a real problem that someone will pay you to solve. Think about what you already know how to do. Think about the skills you have developed at work, in school, or simply from paying attention over the years. There is almost always something there that other people need and do not have. Bookkeeping, writing, data organization, repair work, tutoring, financial analysis, project management. The list is long. The key is this. When you show up to do that second work, you bring your full attention and your full honesty. You do not just complete the task, you look at the bigger picture. You find the problems the person did not even know they had. You tell them directly without making it dramatic, and you fix it. Competence without ego opens doors. This is one of the most reliable truths in building wealth from nothing. When you are at the entry level and you solve a problem better than anyone expected, people notice. They refer you. One person leads to the next. One door opens into the room where the next door is. That is how networks actually work, not through networking events and business cards, but through quietly being excellent at something useful. Take that second income and send every dollar of it directly into your investment account or toward high-interest debt. Do not let it fund lifestyle upgrades. Not yet. This phase requires patience and a certain willingness to live below your means while you are building below the surface. Section 5. Eliminating debt. Without losing momentum, debt is not a moral failure. It is a financial condition. And like any condition, the correct response is methodical treatment, not panic. High-interest debt, especially credit card debt, is the single most effective destroyer of wealth-building momentum. It is mathematically impossible to outperform a 20% interest rate with almost any investment return. So if you carry high-interest debt, eliminating it is your first investment. It is the highest return you can get on any dollar you own. Here is how you approach it without losing momentum on everything else. First, you do not stop investing entirely while paying off debt. If your employer offers a retirement account match, you contribute at least enough to get the full match. That is an instant 100% return on that portion of your money. No investment beats it. Second, you build a small emergency fund before aggressively paying down debt. $1,000 to $1,500 in a separate high-yield savings account. This is the buffer that prevents a flat tire or an unexpected medical bill from sending you directly back to the credit card. Third, you attack the debt with every extra dollar you can find. You list your debts by interest rate, highest to lowest, and you direct all extra payment capacity to the top of the list while paying minimums on everything else. This is not complicated. It is just relentless. Every month you watch the number fall, slowly at first, and then faster as the balance shrinks and more of your payment hits principal. And when the debt is gone, you do not celebrate by spending. You redirect every single dollar that was going to debt directly into your investment account. The behavior stays exactly the same. Only the destination changes. This is one of the most important moments in the entire process. The debt is gone. The habit is already built. The money was already leaving your account every month. Now it goes to work for you instead of against you. Section 6. Acquiring your first asset. At some point, the portfolio you are building in the stock market begins to feel like a foundation. And the next question becomes, what do I build on top of it? The answer, for most people who build serious wealth from nothing, is cash-flowing real estate. Not luxury properties. Not vacation rentals in trending cities. Small, unglamorous properties in stable or improving areas that produce more income every month than they cost to own. A duplex, a small rental house, a property that most conventional investors overlook because it is not exciting or prestigious. These are the doors that people with smaller starting capital can actually enter. Here is how you approach the first one. You get your real estate license, or you build a relationship with someone who knows distressed property markets. You look for properties that are priced below their potential because of cosmetic issues, poor management, or a seller who needs to exit quickly. Not structural disasters, cosmetic problems that a reasonable renovation budget can fix. You walk the property yourself. You bring someone who understands construction costs. You go room by room and you make a list. You get a realistic estimate. And you run the numbers honestly. The numbers that matter are these. What is the monthly mortgage payment? What do comparable units in the area rent for? What are the insurance, property tax, and maintenance reserve costs? When you subtract all of those from the rental income, is there anything left? That remainder is your monthly cash flow. If the number is positive, you are building something real. Do not expect the first lender to say yes, or the second. Rejection is part of the process, not a signal to stop. You keep moving to the next lender. You bring clean financial history, documented income, and a clear picture of the deal. Community credit unions often move where larger banks will not. Credit unions exist to serve their members. And they will sometimes look at deals that institutional lenders flag as too risky. When you get the approval, you move fast. You draft the lease from a legal template and you learn the landlord laws in your state. You handle the management yourself in the early stages. Not because you cannot afford a property manager, but because understanding every part of the operation makes you a far better investor later when the portfolio is larger. Section 7. Scaling without rushing. One property becomes two becomes three. Not because you are rushing, but because the first one taught you exactly what the second one requires. The key at this stage is a discipline that most new real estate investors struggle with. You do not spend the cash flow. You hold it. You build reserves. You keep a dedicated maintenance fund and an emergency buffer that you do not touch for any reason other than the properties themselves. At the same time, you do not slow down on your index fund contributions. These two tracks, real estate and market investing, run in parallel. They serve different purposes. Real estate produces monthly cash flow now. The index fund builds long-term compounding wealth that you will not touch for decades. Each one does something the other cannot. At this point in the process, you also have something new. You have a track record. You have documented income from real sources. You have properties that produce. And that track record is a form of capital that most people never think about. A track record opens rooms. So when people in your professional world see the portfolio you have built on what looked like a modest salary, they ask how you did it. You tell them plainly. No performance, no mystery, just the actual steps. Most people will hear it and nod and do nothing. But occasionally, someone in a different league will hear it and recognize that you think differently than most people. And that recognition is what leads to the next level. Never mistake looking busy for making progress. Every action you take should either build an asset, pay down a liability, or develop a skill you will use to do one of those two things. Anything else is just motion. Section 8. Entering bigger rooms. At some point in this process, if you have been consistent, something unexpected happens. The people doing deals at a higher level begin to notice you. Not because of your net worth, because of your thinking. Private equity, commercial real estate partnerships. Deal structures that operate at a completely different scale than what you started with. These opportunities do not come from LinkedIn profiles or cold outreach. They come from a reputation for being right about things that other people missed. When someone offers you a piece of a larger deal, your job is not to be impressed. Your job is to understand it completely. What is the asset? What is the acquisition cost? What are the carrying costs during repositioning? What does the stabilized income look like? What is the exit strategy and over what time horizon? What happens to your investment if the deal goes sideways by 30%? Is it survivable? That last question is the most important one you will ever ask in any deal. Not what is the upside? What is the worst realistic scenario and can I survive it? If the answer is yes, you proceed. If the answer is no, you pass regardless of how good the opportunity sounds. When a deal like this comes through and you source it yourself, the structure usually involves something called carried interest, or carry. Carry is a percentage of the profits you receive for finding and structuring the deal without putting up the full acquisition capital yourself. It is how people with smaller balance sheets participate in larger deals, and it is one of the most powerful mechanisms for building wealth at scale. You still run the numbers as if every dollar at risk is your own, because your reputation is also at risk, and that is worth more than any single deal. So, Section 9. Protecting what you build. Here is a truth that most wealth-building content skips entirely. Building the wealth is only half the work. Protecting it is the other half. The legal and tax structures around your assets are not optional complexity that you deal with later when you are wealthy enough for it to matter. They are part of the foundation, and you build them early. A limited liability company, an LLC, separates your personal assets from your real estate holdings. It means that if a tenant sues over a property issue, they are suing the LLC, not you personally. Without this structure, everything you have built is exposed in a single lawsuit. A holding company above the LLCs provides another layer. Your rental properties sit inside individual LLCs. The LLCs sit inside a holding company. The holding company is what you own. On each layer of structure reduces the surface area of exposure. Then there are the tax advantages that most people never fully use. Depreciation is one of the most powerful of these. The IRS allows you to deduct the theoretical wear and tear on a rental property from your taxable income each year, even if the property is actually appreciating in value. For a modest portfolio, this depreciation deduction alone can reduce your taxable income by tens of thousands of dollars annually. That is real money that stays in the system instead of leaving to taxes. At some point, a fee-only financial planner becomes one of the best investments you can make. Fee-only means they are paid directly by you, not by commissions on products they sell you. A good one will find structures and strategies you have not considered, and they will save you far more than they cost. Hiring someone who knows more than you about tax efficiency is not an admission of weakness. It is a sign of wisdom. Section 10. The structure that outlives you. Generational wealth is not an inheritance strategy. Most people think it is. They think you build up a pile of money and then you leave it to your children when you die. And that is part of it. But the pile alone does not create generational wealth. The structure does. A family trust is a legal vehicle that holds assets and governs how they are managed, distributed, and protected across multiple generations. It is not just a tool for the extremely wealthy. Anyone building a serious portfolio should begin modeling a trust structure long before they think they need one. Here is why. Without a trust, your assets go through a court process called probate when you die. Probate is slow, public, and expensive. It exposes what you have built to legal challenges and delays that can take years. A trust transfers assets directly to the people or institutions you name, quickly and privately, without court involvement. Beyond the death transfer, a trust governs what happens to money over time. You can structure it so that beneficiaries receive income without being able to dissolve the principal. You can include conditions that require the assets to remain invested rather than spent. You can build rules into the structure that protect the wealth from the very human tendency to consume what you did not build. Think of it this way. You spent decades building a machine that produces income and grows value over time. The trust is the instruction manual that tells the machine how to keep running after you are no longer the one operating it. Without the instruction manual, someone else has to make it up as they go, and most people will make the wrong decisions when they inherit something they did not build themselves. Build the structure before it feels necessary. That is the only time building structure actually works. Section 11. Staying calm when markets move against you. At every stage of this process, the market will move against you. This is not a possibility. It is a certainty. Interest rates will rise and compress the value of your real estate portfolio. A tenant will stop paying. A retailer you never heard of will file for bankruptcy, and two of the businesses renting space in your commercial property will close overnight. A credit event on the other side of the world will tighten the lending window you plan to refinance through next quarter. None of this is a signal that you have failed or that the system is broken. It is simply the market doing what markets always do. They move, they correct, they create problems, and then they create the solutions to those problems. What separates people who build lasting wealth from people who don't is not that the successful ones avoided these problems. It is that they planned for them in advance. You maintain reserves that most people at your net worth level would have already deployed into new deals. Those reserves feel like wasted opportunity when the market is smooth. They feel like everything when the market is not. You model downside scenarios regularly, not obsessively, quarterly. When you ask, if commercial real estate dropped 40%, what happens to my portfolio? If a major tenant leaves, how long can I carry the property on reserves? If the refinancing market closes for 12 months, what is my alternative path? You are not trying to predict what will happen. You are just making sure that no single bad event can undo everything. Resilience is not optimism. Resilience is preparation. When the problem arrives, and it will, you are already on the phone with the lender before the market opens. You are already modeling 3 alternative scenarios before most people have had their coffee. You are not in a state of shock because you already knew something like this would come eventually. You just did not know which Tuesday it would arrive on. Section 12. What generational actually means. Let's end with the word that started all of this. Generational. Most people hear that word and think about leaving money to their children. And yes, that is part of it. But generational wealth is not really about the transfer of money. It is about the transfer of a way of thinking. The structure you build, the LLCs, the holding company, the trust, the diversified investment accounts, all of that keeps working mechanically after you stop. The machine runs. But what makes the machine last beyond one generation is when the people who inherit it understand why it was built the way it was built. When they know not to consume the principal. When they know that the cash flow is the income and the asset is not for sale. Or when they understand that structure is protection and reserves are strength and patience is the only reliable edge anyone has. That understanding is the real inheritance. You do not need to have children to build generational wealth. You can build it for a younger sibling, a niece, a nephew, a community institution, a scholarship fund with your name on it. The point is that the structure you build is designed to outlast your own life, and it produces good for people who did not have to build it themselves. This is the thing that makes all of it mean something beyond your own bank balance. At the end of this, you might be sitting with a very modest starting point. A checking account that does not feel like much. A salary that feels tight. A debt balance that feels heavy. And everything in this video might feel like it belongs to a different version of your life that does not exist yet. That feeling is normal. And it is also not a reason to wait. You start with the first small move. You automate before you can spend. You bring your full competence to every room you are allowed into. You build one asset at a time. You protect what you build with the right structures. You model the bad scenarios before they happen. You stay calm when they do. And you build something that keeps running long after the cracked monitor in the windowless back office is a story you tell. The market will open again tomorrow, indifferent to where you started. It only has one question for you. What do you do next?